Welcome, everybody, to another week of Creepy Travels. This week we are going to be talking about the black-eyed children or black-eyed kids, also known as, I don't know if they say Beck or B-E-K.
I think B-E-K.
Just B-E-K.
I don't know.
So B-E-K. A little background before we get into some of the stories. So Alan and I, every week, we are going to do 3 stories each and just alternate. I wanted to give a little background about these children. So they are an American contemporary legend of paranormal creatures that resemble children between ages 6 and 16 with pale skin and black eyes who are reportedly seen hitchhiking or begging or are encountered on doorsteps of residential homes. So a couple things, you are not supposed to let them in, but they are very persistent on trying to get in, whether it's your vehicle or house. It says demonologists believe they are children of the devil himself, and if you let them in, you are allowing the devil to enter your life. That was just one thing. There's a lot of different ideas of what they are. I thought that one was the most interesting for the purpose of, they are scary children.
See, I thought we were looking at black-eyed peas in their music.
Shut up.
I looked up the wrong things.
Every time we would look something up, I know, like I wanted to autofill to peas. Oh yeah, so they are typically in dark clothing and have hoods. This isn't what they're always in. Sometimes they're in old attire and things like that. They don't typically look directly at you at first. It takes a while, and then they'll look up at you. And their whole eye, like the iris, the pupil, the sclera, everything is black, which is...
Look at you with your terms.
I know, and I didn't even paste...
Sclera?
I didn't even paste it. I memorized
What's
that.
What's the sclera?
The sclera, I believe, is the white part of your eye.
Oh.
I'm going to confidently say, yes, it is the white part of your eye. But I looked it up, but I didn't put it in my notes. So I'm like, I'm going to remember that word, and I sure did. All right, after our brief pause to let our cat out the doggy door, where were we?
Black-eyed peas?
Scleras.
Yeah.
So it's genetically not possible to have completely black eyes. It even went through being like, depending on your sickness, your sclera could be like yellow or different colors, but black is not an option. And then people tend to feel uneasy around these kids, like when they're in their presence. Like all of a sudden they greet them and then they just feel this uneasiness. So with that being said, would you like to go first?
Sure.
All right.
I'll do my first one and then I'll hear yours. Mine will be scarier than yours.
All right.
Yeah, probably not.
Mine's sad.
I don't want to hear that.
I know. That's all right. You're first. Well, you'll forget while you tell me your scary story. I'm all ears.
All right, so mine are from Reddit. This is from Hammerhands from 2012. It's titled Encounter with a Black-Eyed Kid. Wonder what it's about. I recently read a story about the black-eyed kids. This story felt like a twisted tale of deja vu. I believe I have encountered a BEK, or Beck, whatever you want to say. I've never mentioned this particular detail about the eyes to anyone, for fear they would think I was fabricating the story or going crazy. The incident took place about 13 years ago. I had just moved to a new city with my wife. We were small-town newlyweds from the Midwest. We moved cross-country to one of the biggest cities in the Southwest so I could attend graduate school. Being naive and new to the city living, I habitually answered the door without a second thought. Never again after this. The first thing that should have tipped me off to the peculiarity of the situation was the fact that someone was knocking at 6 in the morning. The second thing that should have dawned on me is this kid had to reach over a rather tall patio gate to unlatch and open it. The knock at the door was startling. My wife and I were getting ready for work, a pretty normal routine. The moment I opened the door, I was overtaken with an inexplicable sense of fear. To this day, I can picture him. Teenager, average height, average build, knee-length black leather coat. Short black hair and sunglasses. The sunglasses at 6 a.m. struck me as odd. And even more odd, he was eating an apple. I don't know why that's odd. I guess you're eating at 6 a.m., but...
Yeah, but if you're on someone's step and you're like, I'm just going to eat this apple while I knock on the door.
For us black-eyed children, we don't find that odd. I guess I'm a black-eyed adult. I do not have black eyes, but
not
I
possible.
can pretend. Okay, so at 6 a.m., he's eating an apple. He was very polite and asked if he could come in and warm up. I said, no. Closed the door and slid the security chain into place. A moment later, another knock. I opened the now chained door, and before I could speak, he asked again if he could come in and warm up. No, I replied, and attempted to close the door. Before the door could shut, he put his hand out, stopping the door on its hinges.
No, thanks.
Which reminds me of a story I'll bring up another time that happened to me. Remind me to bring it up with the guy with his hand on the door.
All right.
It's creepy. He looked directly into my eyes, still wearing his sunglasses, and said, "Can I at least get some ketchup for my apple?"
Ew.
F that, I replied. I censored it for the children.
The children who are hopefully not listening.
I was going to say regular and black-eyed children listening. So he said, F that, I replied, albeit a little confused. Get the hell out of here. My wife is calling the police. He takes a moment to let the information sink in, lowers his glasses, revealing eyes as black as obsidian, and says, "No, you won't be calling anybody." At that moment, I forced the door closed, locked it, and called out to my wife. She is scared shitless, hiding in the bedroom.
That would be me.
All jacked up on adrenaline, I ripped the curtains back to look out the window next to the door. He's gone. Absolutely no trace of him. I go out on the patio and check the gate. It's still latched from the inside. That was effed up. I think to myself as I turn to enter the house and notice a half-eaten apple lying on the ground.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's creepy. Then someone else writes in response to him, BEKs are rarely alone, according to most encounters I've read. Maybe he had a partner waiting around somewhere. So, like, if he opens the door, maybe then he comes, so.
Yeah, sometimes, I think some of the stories do that. None of mine do that. I think all of mine actually have two people, because it is common. Sometimes there's a singular, and when they let him in, the other one, like, appears out of nowhere.
That's
like,
creepy.
Oh, hey.
So that's my first one.
I like it. I'm just going to warn everybody. Something sad happens.
You already told
with an animal.
No, I don't want to hear it.
It's okay.
No.
It's in heaven now.
This is why I go to the website. Any scary movie we watch, I go to
doesthedogdie.com. And then it talks about any animal, right? So
it
does the cat die? Does the bird die? Yeah.
It talks about, is there torture? Is there this? Is there that? It's great. It's full of spoilers, but I need to know.
Does a cat die? The answer is yes. I just wanted to pre-warn everybody.
I don't want to hear your story.
I mean, spoiler alert, but... So mine is... I think this one was from Reddit, but it was a slew of different stories, so it doesn't say who it was from. It says, around 2016 in Vermont. Let me start by saying that I know how hard this all will be to believe, but now that I feel like I should share the story with someone, and your website seems like the right place. I made the mistake of letting the black-eyed kids inside, and now I'm worried that I might die because of it. I hope this will be a warning to everyone who is ever in the position to make the same mistake I did. I live just outside of a rural town in Vermont. It's a tight-knit community where everyone knows one another and people don't lock their doors at night. Yeah, I don't care how tight-knit of a family or town we live in. I would always lock our doors.
Yeah.
I've seen too many scary movies. Like, I don't care how close everyone is. It's always the nicest person who ends up, like, being a murderer or something. Sorry, that was just my little side note on that. There's never been any need to. A little over a year ago, I woke up because I heard a loud banging on my front door. At the time, my husband and I lived in a small home on a dirt road just off the rural route into town. It was the middle of a snowstorm, and the nearby hills get very slippery in the snow, so I thought that someone might have been in an accident and broken down. It's happened before. When I looked out the window, I could see that our motion spotlight was on. I could see that there were footprints in the snow that had come from our road and into our driveway, but there was no car anywhere. The snow was still covering the road, and no one had driven on it for at least a couple hours. Our front door was obscured from the window, but I could see that someone was standing there. I wasn't sure what to think, so I woke my husband up just to feel safer. Just so you know, I would do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
While I was telling him what was going on, the banging on the door started again, and my husband went to answer it while I stood in the hallway. Did it mention banging on the door before?
I don't remember hearing it.
Oh, she woke up because there was banging on the front door. That's why she got up in the first place. So sorry, everybody. I kind of just put that away. All right. So she stood in the hallway. When he opened the door, there were two children standing in the snow looking toward the ground. They were a boy and a girl and could not have been more than 8 years old. They were dressed strangely and had odd haircuts. The girl's hair was very long and straight, and the boy had a dated haircut that looked almost like a bowl cut. You had a bowl cut. They weren't dressed for winter, and my first thought was that they must have been Mennonite children, but as far as I know, there was never a large community of Mennonites near us. Thinking back on it, I know that my normal reaction to seeing children in a snowstorm would have been to rush them inside and bundle them up with some blankets and hot cocoa, but that's not how this felt. The children were very unnerving. They would not make eye contact, and when my husband asked them if everything was okay, they asked if they could come in. My husband looked at me like, "What do I do?" And I asked the kids where their parents were. "They'll be here soon," is all they said. It was around 2 o'clock in the morning at this point, so the only reasonable thought in my head was that there must have been an accident or these kids got lost. As much as my instincts told me not to bring them inside, I did it anyway. I went into the kitchen to make them some hot cocoa while my husband took them into the living room. While I was fixing the kettle, I could hear my husband talking to the kids. He was asking them if they were okay, where they came from, how far they walked, if their parents' car was broken down, things like that. But they always answered, "Our parents will be here soon." They spoke in a sing-songy voice. They weren't afraid to be in a stranger's home at all. I started to notice that our cats, we had 4, were all hiding except Pigeon, who was in the kitchen with me. Normally, our cats are very curious and friendly, and we have to be careful that they don't run out the door when we leave. This time, none of them even tried to see who was here, which I thought was very strange. All of the hair on Pigeon's neck was standing up, and his tail was puffed up while he looked in the living room. When I bent down to pet him and see what was wrong, he hissed and started growling and backed up until he hid himself under the kitchen island. I have never seen him do that before. When I walked back into the living room, the kids were sitting on the couch as still as can be, but my husband was holding his head in his hands. I asked him what's wrong, and he just said that he felt very dizzy all of a sudden, but that he was fine. I turned back to the children to give them their cocoa, but when they looked at me, I gasped. It took everything inside of me not to drop the mugs and run away. When they looked at me, their eyes were completely black. They had no whites, just giant black pupils. When they saw that I was scared, they stood up and asked if they could use the bathroom. I tried to be as composed as I could be and showed them down the hall. They went into the bathroom together, and I hurried back to my husband to ask him if he had seen their eyes. He had seen them too and said that it looked like his brother's badly bruised eyes after a car accident. We were in the middle of talking about whose children they could be when my husband's nose started to bleed. He'd never had nosebleeds as long as I had known him. I just knew inside myself that this had something to do with the kids in the bathroom, and I started crying while I ran to get my husband some tissues. That's when the power went out. I heard my husband yell my name from the living room, and as I started to walk back through the hallway, I stopped dead in my tracks. The 2 children were standing at the end of the hallway. They weren't moving, and I have never been so scared in my whole life. They just stood there in the dark. After what felt like forever, the boy said, "Our parents are here." And they walked to the door, opened it, and walked out, leaving it wide open. My husband jumped up to close it and almost fell over. We looked out the window and saw 2 men standing by a black car idling at the end of our driveway. The men looked like they were wearing black-colored suits and were very tall, at least 6 feet. When my husband waved at them, they just stared at us, got into the car, and drove off. Our power came on about half an hour later, but nothing was the same after that. Over the next few months, 3 of our cats went missing. We could only assume that they ran away somewhere and never came back. But the worst thing was coming home to find Pigeon in a puddle of blood on the living room floor. He looked like he had been vomiting blood. The vet told us that he had some kind of hemorrhage. After my husband's nosebleeds became a regular occurrence, we went to see the doctor. He didn't know what to make of it other than dry nasal passages, but my husband was diagnosed with an aggressive skin cancer. When the doctor asked us if he used tanning beds, we both thought he was joking, but apparently this kind of melanoma is linked to overuse of indoor tanning. The doctors think he will recover, but don't understand how it got so bad so quickly. My husband has never worked an outdoor job and spends relatively little time in the sun. Since we let the black-eyed kids inside our home, I've also suffered from regular dizzy spells and nosebleeds on a regular basis. I've had other issues, which I won't mention here, but trust me when I say that I'm suddenly in the worst condition of my life and no one can do anything about it. I know that all of this is because I let the black-eyed children into my home. We told everyone we could about the strange kids that showed up that night, but no one else saw them, and some laugh at how scared we were of the Mennonite kids, but we know what we saw. I wish my husband had never opened the door. And then they were saying, feel free to publish this as a warning to others about the black-eyed kids. My advice would be to lock your doors, call the police, and wait for the morning. Don't make the same mistake that I did. So it's really creepy. I don't know if I mentioned it in one of my other stories, but someone did mention while I was reading them all saying, like, people who experience the black-eyed kids know about them. Like, typically it's people's stories who knew of the existence of them, and a lot of the times it's after they hear stories about
This is
them.
great.
So, if anyone hears a knock on their door tonight, sorry. Don't answer it. Just wait till the morning. All right, what's your next story?
My next story is another Reddit one. I don't have the year, but it's from Cutie Patootie. It's like Cutie Patooey,
Yeah.
but Cutie Patootie.
Yeah, I gotcha.
All right. So they write, okay, so hey, no sleep. I'm not a writer. I just love reading all these stories on here. They're all so creepy. I never thought I'd have to post something for help. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm in my early 20s. I just moved into this apartment, and I tend to live a very private life. I don't even have a Facebook account. I work during the day at a grocery store. Okay, so I'm walking up my flight of steps to get to my apartment, and I hear these kids laughing, and then I heard whispering. It was kind of late, so I thought this was weird, but I ignored it and walked into my apartment. I live on the 3rd floor. I was getting ready to open my balcony door. It was really muggy in my apartment. I walk over to the door and pull my blinds, and 2 kids are staring back at me.
Oh, hell no.
So on her balcony.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about
creepy.
the 3rd floor. God. Ugh.
Yeah. I screamed and backed away, smashing my leg into the table. They were both in blue jeans, and the oldest, he was taller, had on a green shirt with white stripes, and the younger had on a button-up light blue shirt. The oldest one touched the sliding door. Hey, miss, can you let us in? The younger one just kept looking around. I still just stared at them. I finally was able to say, how'd you get on my balcony? I walked to the door and noticed how excited the older one got. He moved closer to the entrance. Can you let us in? I wasn't thinking. I unlocked the door, and when I looked up, their eyes were black. The entire eye. I quick locked the door and told them I had to call the police because my door was jammed and I couldn't unlock the door. Yeah, I would have lied to him too.
Definitely a police situation.
I would either lied or just told him to leave.
Oh, yeah.
I do picture them then, like, who knows? Like, are they distracting you from something, from the other door? Who knows? Mm-hmm. It's creepy. All right, so she tells him she can't lock the door. So I called the police. The oldest boy pleaded with me the entire time to let them in. The police arrived about an hour ago. They came in and walked to my balcony. When they opened the balcony door, nothing was there. They looked down and saw 2 children that were running in the parking lot away from the building. The police took a report and said they've had to have had help getting up there, and that they would question the neighbors. I'm freaking out. I'm crying. I don't want to stay here, but then again, I don't feel safe going outside right now.
Yeah, I'd be in the same boat.
They do a sad face and say, I'm scared, no sleep. I put salt by my door and windows, but I've never seen eyes black like that. Not even in movies. I'm terrified. Do you guys think they'll come back? And then there's nothing else. Then there's people talking about like the salt and stuff. They're like, why'd you put salt by the door? They're saying like the whole like evil things aren't supposed to be able to cross salt.
Yeah. But people are questioning it?
Yeah.
Oh, because they didn't know. I mean, I've watched enough shows where I understand that for the most part, salt will keep a demon out.
But then they're saying that that's a myth and people just do it they're like, but whatever makes you feel better. So I'm like, whatever. Might as well do something that...
Well, just like this story. The people who are giving her crap about salt, some people don't even believe who knows if these stories are real, but we're still there to listen to them. Mm-hmm. I find them very interesting, and it's creepy. It's always, if you end up letting them in, something really bad happens. Like, I did not want to share this story because it was too gruesome for me to, like, some of these sound more real than others. Mm-hmm. And one was like, this guy straight up, like, saw his wife get murdered, and then they locked themselves in their kid's room and they murdered the other kid. And I'm like, okay. I'll tell you about it right now, but I won't read the story because it was just a little too far. It was too much for me.
Yeah, there's somewhere like there'd be news articles, you'd think, but
yeah,
like,
I wasn't
a lot of
digging
these
that
you can't
far.
really have news articles because they usually just leave, and that's just creepy.
He probably got in trouble for that murder. All right, so my second story is also from Reddit, and it's from No Sleep Trash. So it says, the black-eyed kids came. Before you read this, I have to tell you how I feel about these stories. I haven't believed in the paranormal since high school. I'd never even heard of the black-eyed kids until Reddit. These stories were always just entertainment for me, and I took them as fiction even though they are all true. I found myself stuck on the BEK stories because they seemed the most unusual to me, and I enjoyed a fresh change of pace over the regular ghost story. I feel like that's why I kind of picked it, too, for our topic this week.
Mm-hmm.
I feel very guilty for what I'm about to tell you all because I fear that reading these stories is... Oh, here's what I was telling you earlier. Fear that reading these stories is why it happened to me. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. It's only my knowledge from reading BEK stories on Reddit that I feel saved my life last night. There is no history of mental illness in my family, and I have never been drunk or taken a mind-altering substance. The strongest I've ever had is ibuprofen. I feel that many of you will discount my story if I don't make you aware of this. I also want to add that I will not be answering your questions or even rereading what I am writing right now. This is a throwaway account, and I must use it to warn you of the BKs, and I will never speak of this again, although I fear I may be driven to madness through my paranoia, even as I write the story at my brother's house with the lights on while he plays Call of Duty. I am terrified. Last night was like any other night. I was switching between listening to music and watching YouTube videos with one headphone in so I can hear my infant daughter if she cries. That way my wife can get a full night's sleep. She works at 4 a.m. at the hospital every day. When I decide to go lay down in the spare bed in the baby's room, just as I dozed off, I heard a thumping coming from the front porch. Startled at first, I opened my eyes wide and scanned the room. Realizing it was most likely my cat scratching himself on the front porch, I dozed back off. Then again, the thumping. Damn cat. I got out of bed to run him off the porch only to see he wasn't there anymore. There's nothing with the cat, just so everyone's aware.
Okay, good.
Just so everyone's aware. Now that I was up again, I wasn't the least bit tired. I figured I'll just get some tea and check Facebook while I'm up. Maybe finish the web series I was watching on YouTube. A few minutes into the video, I felt the sudden urge to look up at the kitchen window. There they were. The tops of two short-statured people's heads cresting the stairs just above my window frame. The people were just short enough to not see in the window, but I could see out. I heard no footsteps on my porch as my stomach turned, but the knock was a steady, hollow thump. The very same thump I had just blamed on my cat. Deciding it was best not to answer, I shut my laptop and crept by the door back to the baby's room. I assumed it was some of the people from the low-income housing across the road from me that were high or hiding from the cops, or maybe looking for my cousin who stays with me often and has many friends over there. The last thing I needed was to try to explain to two stoners that I was trying to sleep even though it was 2 a.m. It wasn't until I got to my daughter's room that the creepiness set in. The thump had moved from the kitchen to the bedroom windows. Both windows, a room apart, thumping in perfect timing. These stoners were going to wake up my daughter if I didn't run them off now. Pissed off, I went out to the kitchen, unlocked and opened the door, ready to run around to the side of the house and kick some little idiot's ass. It happened then. Standing there looking up at me were two 10 or 11-year-old boys. The feeling of dread and the smell of mold almost made me vomit. The smaller of the two then spoke. "May we use your telegraph?" Huh? I just stared blankly at these boys, horrified of what I then realized. Side note, that's something that's common too, is they'll use verbiage that's really dated. Like the kids always seem like they're from a different, like an older era. So horrified of what I then realized, their eyes were pitch black. He asked again to use my telegraph. There wasn't a sound to be heard. No crickets chirping, no dogs barking, no cars driving by, nothing. I tried to play it cool and ignore the fact that he didn't say telephone or phone or cell, anything that would have made any sense of the situation, and calmly replied, "I don't have service at my house, sorry." The expressions on their faces turned to rage as I finished my sentence. Swiftly, I shut the door and locked it as quickly as I could, then stumbled back to protect my daughter. I picked her up from her crib and held her close. The fact that she didn't wake up freaked me out the most, but I managed to gather my senses enough to make sure she was still breathing and warm. Everything seemed okay with her. The thumping on the windows was back. I dropped to the floor as close to the wall as I could and held my little girl in my arms and wept like a child. I felt helpless and afraid. I lied there for what felt like hours and hours, crying and shaking until I heard it. My wife's alarm clock. The thumping stopped the instant the alarm went off, and I crept into the master bedroom with the baby. "What's wrong with you?" my wife asked. "I just had a bad dream," is all I could mutter out. "Okay, well, give me the baby so I can feed her before work." I handed my wife the baby, and she fed her like any normal day. I turned on every light in the house and made coffee for her. For some reason, just having her awake calmed my nerves enough to pretend like nothing happened. I walked her out to the car nervously with the baby in my arms. I asked her not to leave until I walked back in the house. She was put off by the request, but did so to humor me. Once I was safely in the house, I locked the door again, and in the house I sat horrified until she got home. I insisted we go to the next town over and stay the weekend at my brother's house. And here I sit horrified while she sleeps in the guest room with my daughter, wondering why they stopped when the alarm went off. I think I know the answer. I was aware of BEKs, she wasn't. Every story I've read about them is from someone who already knew about them. Maybe, just maybe, knowledge of them existing is the only reason they visit. I'm afraid and I'm sorry. So that's
creepy.
It is creepy. But yeah, like he said, like it tends to be you know about them. There might be stories where people didn't know about them, but if anyone has a black-eyed kid story after this, please let us know. Write us in. Because I know we're going to I want to share more of these. I think it's good. So we'll just give them little, like this is going to be the black-eyed children. I'm not going to call it part 1, but we'll figure it out. All right, what you got for us?
So my third one, before my positive things. So this is from Big Taco 123.
I love usernames.
Mm-hmm. On March 17th, 2008, I had my one and only encounter with a black-eyed kid. Before my experience, I had never heard of anything having to do with the black-eyed kids. I was 12.
Oh, so this is an example of not knowing what they were at first.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there you go.
I was sitting outside of a hairdresser's in an old Chevy pickup waiting for my mom to get her hair cut. About 15 minutes had passed, and I saw some kid walking back and forth along the sidewalk in front of my parked car. At first, I thought I recognized him as one of my friends from school, so I banged on the front windshield until he looked my way. So he's getting their attention.
Mm-hmm.
It was not anyone I knew. At this point, I was not scared at all. Not yet. The boy walked over to the side of the car and just stares. I think to let me get a good look at his eyes, to freak me out. Let me tell you, if you have never seen a black-eyed kid, you have no idea what to imagine. Pupils black as the night sky. The boy whispers, "You must let me in." And then I locked the car doors and ducked down into the space below the seats. 5 minutes later, he was gone. When my mother got back to the car, she told me a boy with black eyes had come into the hairdresser's and insisted for my mother to give him the keys to the car. She refused. Thank God she did.
That's creepy as hell. I did read that one earlier. Oh. I saw that one and I'm like, it's good. I don't know. I think I already had my 3. That is scary as hell. It's weird that both of them saw them.
Mm-hmm. In like different locations too.
Yeah.
Like close by.
Yeah, but still. All right. I have one more before you lighten up the mood. This one's short. So this is my last one. It was from an account where they just shared a whole bunch of people's stories. So it's not written in the woman's point of view. She's not writing it to us. They're writing about her encounter.
Oh, okay.
So on Thanksgiving 2015 in suburban America, a woman was enjoying the holiday on her own in her house when she heard a knock. It was around 7:30 p.m. when she heard a knock on the door. Believing it to be her neighbors, she opened the door without looking. However, there stood 2 boys outside the door with an eerie stance. They avoided any eye contact, but kept insisting to enter the house. The woman became hesitant, which is when the older of the 2 boys became persistent. It is here that they finally looked up and the woman noticed that they had completely black eyes. She shut the door on them, but they continued to knock on the door. Eventually, she fell asleep during the early morning with all the lights on and the TV playing, but when she awoke, she found all the lights turned off and the TV filled with black and white static. There had been someone or something in her house. And that's it.
I don't like
it's
it.
Short but creepy. Like,
it is.
Because her house still got affected even though she did not let them in.
Yeah, that's creepy.
Yeah. There are our creepy stories of the black-eyed children from around the... I mean, these were all... I don't have locations for where these all were from, but they were all over. All right. Can you brighten up our nights before everyone goes to sleep?
I'm going to say something positive. Just something that I saw, and then a little short story that's funny.
Okay.
So, you being married to me, you know that I don't really like to eat pork. And part of it is just how smart they are. But I also saw there was videos. Facebook is apparently... I'm searching for positive things. Mm-hmm. So now Facebook, like the black-eyed kids, you invite it into your life. Like advertisements.
Yeah.
And now they're showing me videos of pigs doing things for other pigs. Like there's pig sanctuaries. Aww. And there's like pigs that are disabled. And other pigs will go grab them food.
Oh my God, that's precious.
And bring the food to them. Yeah, it was really cute. It made me very happy. And it like reaffirmed I'm really glad I don't eat pork.
Did you know there's like an island of pigs? Like people travel there to see them on the beach?
No.
Yeah.
But
just a little fun fact.
As smart as dogs. And I don't eat dogs either.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that one.
Mm-hmm. I'm just trying to encourage other people not to eat pigs too. Look, so this one's the title. I was admiring my aunt's necklace when she surprised me by announcing, "I'm leaving it to you in my will." I was overjoyed, perhaps too much. "Oh," I shouted, "I'm looking forward to that."
That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for...
That's my very short story.
Thanks for bringing the mood back up and not scary. Well, thank you guys for listening this week. If you have any scary stories, please go ahead and share them with us. You can email us at creepytravelspodcast@gmail.com, and we'd love to share your stories on our next episode. You guys all have a great night and sweet dreams.